Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you couldn't imagine a world without them? That was me. I built my entire life around my husband. He wasn't just the man I loved. He was my best friend, my partner, my safe place. At least that's what I believed. But sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who carve the deepest wounds. It started with little things: missed calls, late nights at the office, the faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe I was paranoid. I wanted to believe the man I gave my youth to would never betray me. But in the quiet corners of my heart, I knew something was wrong. And then came the night that shattered me completely. I had just finished preparing dinner, his favorite meal, the one he always asked for after a long day. I waited, staring at the clock, hoping he'd walk through the door with his tired smile, kiss me on the forehead, and tell me he was glad to be home. But when the door finally opened, he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, younger, dressed beautifully, her hand resting on his arm like she belonged there. My heart stopped. He didn't even hesitate, didn't even flinch. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "This is Rachel. She makes me happy. I don't love you anymore. You should start accepting that." Can you imagine it? Your entire life torn apart in a single sentence. I couldn't breathe. My legs shook. My chest felt like it was collapsing. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand an explanation. But nothing came out. I just stood there, numb, my whole body trembling. And in that silence, I saw it. The way he smirked. The way she looked at me with pity. They thought they had one dot, but what they didn't know was that silence is not weakness. Because in that moment, as my world crumbled, something inside me hardened. Something stronger than pain, stronger than fear, stronger than betrayal. Revenge. Tell me, my friends, where are you watching this from? Because betrayal doesn't care about distance or culture. Whether you're in New York, London, Mumbai, or Cairo, the feeling is the same. The sharp knife of someone you trusted cutting deep into your heart. That night, I cried until my body had no tears left. But when the morning came, I wiped my face, looked into the mirror, and made myself a promise. If he thought I was going to walk away quietly, he was wrong. If he thought he could erase me from his life without consequence, he was wrong. If he thought his betrayal would break me forever, he was wrong, because I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to run. I was going to stay. And I was going to make him regret the day he ever chose her over me. Pain changes people. It either breaks them or it teaches them to bend until they can rise stronger than before. And me? I chose not to break. I chose to bend, to hide, to wait. Because revenge is not something you rush. No, revenge is like cooking a feast. It takes time, patience, and the right ingredients. After that night, I played my part well. I let him believe I was defeated. I kept my voice quiet, my eyes lowered, my presence small. He thought I had accepted his betrayal, that I would fade into the background while he lived openly with his mistress. He didn't even hide her anymore. She came to our home as if it were hers, sat in my chair, touched the things I had bought, laughed in the kitchen I had once filled with love. Do you know what it feels like to watch another woman take your place in front of your eyes? To stand in the home you've built and feel invisible in it? It is hell. A slow, burning hell. But what they didn't know was that while I kept my mouth shut, my eyes were wide open. I watched them. I memorized their patterns, what time they met, how much money he gave her, what lies he told me to cover his tracks. I kept a little notebook hidden in the back of my closet where I wrote down everything: dates, times, names, places, even the way his voice changed when he spoke to her. At first, it was just a way to keep myself sane. But then I realized this wasn't just survival. This was evidence. This was the rope I would one day use to hang him. One evening, I followed him. He told me he had a late business meeting. I smiled and nodded like the obedient wife he thought I still was. But the moment he left, I slipped out too. My heart was racing as I drove behind his car, keeping my distance. He parked near a hotel, and there she was, waiting for him. I watched them walk in together, hand in hand, laughing like teenagers in love. My stomach turned, but my mind grew sharper. I pulled out my phone, took pictures, recorded videos. Proof, solid proof. Over the next weeks, I became two women. The broken wife on the outside and the watchful hunter on the inside. He didn't notice, because arrogance blinds men like him. He thought I was too weak to fight back. He thought his power over me was eternal. But arrogance is the seed of downfall. I started digging deeper. I remembered how he used to brag about his business deals, about the money he moved under the table, about the shortcuts he took that nobody could ever trace, except now someone was tracing them. Me? I searched through his drawers, copied documents, took pictures of contracts. I found bank statements, hidden accounts, records of transactions that would ruin him if they ever saw the light of day. And while I collected his secrets, I started building myself in silence. I reconnected with people I had lost while living in his shadow, old friends, family members, even colleagues I had abandoned because he didn't approve of them. Piece by piece, I rebuilt my support system, making sure he never knew. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not just about taking something away. It's about making them feel what they made you feel. He made me feel powerless, so I wanted to take his power. He made me feel invisible, so I wanted to make him invisible in the eyes of the world. He made me feel worthless, so I wanted to make sure he lost everything he thought gave him worth. One night, as I sat alone in the bedroom, staring at my notebook filled with months of secrets, I whispered to myself, "Not yet. Be patient." Because patience is what makes revenge perfect. Strike too soon, and you only scratch the surface. Wait long enough, and you can bury them completely. And so, I waited. I cooked for him when he came home. I smiled politely when he brought her into the house. I played the role of the silent, broken wife. But inside, I was sharpening the knife of my revenge, waiting for the day I would finally plunge it into his pride. Tell me, my friends, have you ever had to wear a mask of weakness while burning with strength inside? Have you ever stayed quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because you were saving your voice for the perfect moment? Where are you watching from? Because I know there are women and men everywhere who have swallowed their pain, waiting for the right time to strike back. My husband believed he had one, that he had broken me, that he could replace me without consequence. But little did he know, every smile I gave him was poison. And soon, that poison was going to destroy him from the inside out. Revenge is like planting seeds. You water them in silence, you protect them in the dark, and then one day the garden blooms for the whole world to see. My seeds were ready. By the time months had passed, I had enough evidence to ruin him in every way possible. But revenge is not just about having the knife. It's about choosing when and where to twist it. Timing was everything. The perfect moment came sooner than I expected. My husband was planning a grand celebration for his birthday. He wanted everyone there, business partners, friends, even distant family members. Of course, she would be there too, standing proudly by his side, playing the role of the new queen in my castle. That was my moment. The stage he had built for himself would become the platform for his destruction. In the weeks leading up to the party, I kept playing my role. The quiet, obedient wife. I offered to help organize things, to prepare the house, to invite guests. He didn't even hesitate to let me in. His arrogance. He believed I had surrendered. But behind the scenes, I was setting my trap. I contacted a few trusted friends, people who had seen through his facade but never had the courage to confront him. I shared just enough with them to gain their support. They didn't know the full plan, but they knew something was coming. Something big. And then I reached out to someone even more important, the press. Quietly, anonymously, I leaked little pieces of information, hints of scandal, whispers of corruption. I made sure they were interested, curious, ready to attend the party for coverage. The night arrived. I dressed simply, not in glittering clothes like her, but my simplicity was intentional. I wanted to appear small, harmless, almost invisible, because invisibility was my weapon. Guests filled the hall, glasses clinking, laughter echoing. My husband stood tall, his mistress glued to his side, her smile radiant. He looked around the room as though he owned it, owned all of us. He even glanced at me once, smirking, as if to remind me of my place. But what he didn't know was that the place he had given me, the shadows, was where power was born. As the music played and people mingled, I slipped away quietly into the back room where the projector and screens had been set up for his grand speech. He planned to show a slideshow of his achievements, his victories, his empire. Except now, those screens belonged to me. My hands shook slightly as I replaced his files with mine, videos of him and her walking into hotels, pictures of his secret bank accounts, screenshots of his messages, his lies, his betrayals, and then documents, contracts, signatures, deals that proved his corruption. Every secret I had collected was now waiting in that slideshow. When I returned to the hall, my heart was pounding so loudly I thought people could hear it. But I smiled faintly. took a seat in the corner, and waited. Finally, the moment came. He tapped the microphone, smiling proudly, the mistress holding his arm. "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight," he began. "This year has been the most successful of my life, and it's only just the beginning." The crowd clapped, glasses lifted. He nodded, soaking in the admiration, then signaled for the slideshow to begin, and then silence. The first image appeared. Not his company logo. Not his smiling face, but him, with her, in a hotel lobby, holding her waist. Gasps echoed through the hall. Murmurs rippled across the crowd. He froze, his smile faltering. The next slide appeared, him again, in bed, kissing her, laughing, his face drained of color. The mistress's hand slipped from his arm, her eyes wide. Then came the documents, bank accounts, illegal deals, corruption, fraud. The hall erupted. Some people shouted, others grabbed their phones. Cameras flashed as journalists swarmed forward, recording every second. He tried to stop it, rushing toward the projector, shouting for the staff. But it was too late. The damage was done. His empire, his pride, his reputation, shredded in front of everyone he wanted to impress. And me. I stayed seated, calm, watching his downfall unfold like the climax of a movie I had written. He turned to me then, his face red with rage, his eyes wild. "You," he shouted across the room. "You did this!" I stood slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time in months. My voice was steady, clear, cutting through the chaos. "No," I said, "you did this. All I did was show them the truth." The room fell silent for a moment, and then the whispers began again. Louder, harsher. Words like cheater, liar, criminal. He looked around desperately, but there was no escape. His allies stepped back, his friends avoided his gaze, his mistress slipped quietly out the door. He was alone, exposed. Tell me, my friends, have you ever dreamed of seeing someone who broke you crumble in front of the whole world? Have you ever imagined the look on their face when their lies finally burn to ashes? Where are you watching from? Because I promise you that moment when the betrayer falls is worth every second of patience. As he stood there, trembling, I felt something strange. Not pity, not regret, but power. The kind of power he had stolen from me now returned, tenfold. And this was only the beginning. Humiliation is powerful, but it is only the beginning. A man like my husband, arrogant, corrupt, selfish, doesn't break with just one public scandal. No, he clings, he claws, he tries to rebuild. And that's why my revenge didn't stop at the birthday party. That was simply the spark. The fire had only just begun. The morning after, the whole city was talking. His face was everywhere, not on business billboards, but on scandal headlines. Businessman exposed, corruption, infidelity, betrayal. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, but not with support, with accusations, with questions, with people demanding answers he didn't have. And me, I didn't hide. I walked through the streets with my head high, no longer the shadow of his pride. Neighbors who once looked at me with pity now looked at me with awe. I was no longer the weak wife. I was the woman who had brought down the man who thought he was untouchable. But humiliation wasn't enough. Not for what he did to me. Not for the years he stole from my life. Remember the documents I had collected? The proof of his crimes. The illegal money. The backdoor deals. The names of people he had cheated. I had only shown a piece of it at the party. The rest, the most damning, I handed to the authorities. Investigations began within days. Bank accounts were frozen. Business partners cut ties. One by one, the pillars of his empire collapsed. He tried to fight it, hired lawyers, begged his allies, even tried to reach out to me. Can you imagine the same man who once looked me in the eyes and told me I was nothing, now calling me, begging me to help save him? I didn't answer. Silence was my reply. Because silence, when you choose it, is the loudest answer of all. His mistress disappeared quickly. She was never there for love, only for the lifestyle. And once the money dried up, she left him like dust in the wind. He had traded me his loyal wife, the woman who built his home, his foundation for a temporary distraction. And now he had nothing. I saw him once more, long after the storm had ripped through his life. He was sitting alone in a shabby apartment. The man who once boasted of power, now surrounded by peeling walls and empty bottles. His hair was thinner, his eyes hollow. The arrogance was gone. He looked at me with a mix of anger and sorrow. "Why?" he asked, his voice weak. "Why couldn't you just leave me in peace? Why did you have to destroy everything? And I smiled. Not a cruel smile, but a calm one. Because revenge, at its core, isn't about cruelty, it's about balance. Because I said, you didn't just betray me, you tried to erase me. You thought I was nothing. I had to show you that without me, you are nothing. He lowered his eyes. He didn't argue, because deep down, he knew it was true. Tell me, my friends, have you ever dreamed of this moment? Standing before the one who broke you, not as a victim, but as their judge, their executioner, their reckoning. Where are you watching from? Because I promise you, that moment when the person who once made you beg now begs for your mercy is sweeter than anything you can imagine. I turned and walked away, leaving him in his emptiness. I didn't need to look back. Because true, revenge isn't about staying to watch them suffer. It's about knowing, in your heart, that they will never rise again. And me. I rebuilt my life, slowly, carefully, beautifully. I surrounded myself with people who valued me, respected me. I invested in myself, in my future. I found strength in the pieces of myself he had tried to shatter. I became more than his wife, more than his victim. I became the woman who survived betrayal, who mastered patience, who wrote her own ending. Sometimes, at night, I sit by the window and think of everything I endured, the tears, the silence, the planning, the revenge. And I smile. Not because I destroyed him, but because I rebuilt myself. He thought I could never live without him. But the truth is, he never lived without me. And that is the sweetest revenge of all.